My mother raised my brother and me mostly by herself. I can remember my mother offering me a nickel for every 5 minutes that I wouldn't talk. And then I thought it was a game. But when I was older, I realized what was really going on and what that was really all about. At any time that I spent the night away from home, I would wake up with depression and I would begin crying, and I couldn't control that, and I would begin vomiting and I couldn't control that. And when I got home and was crying and vomiting, my mother would stand over me and yell at me and tell me that I was making myself do that. When I was in the 4th grade, my mother came to me one night and explained that my aunt had suggested to my mother that she spend 15 minutes a day of quality time with me. And so she pulled out an old maid card game and had a glass of milk sitting on the table, and she explained that we were going to play cards and that I was going to drink a warm glass of milk, and that warm milk would make me sleepy. About 3 or 4 minutes into that quality time, my mother slammed the cards down on the table and said, "This is ridiculous. I'm not doing this. Go to bed." I felt embarrassed because I was worthless. And I felt guilty because I knew I didn't deserve for anyone to spend time with me. When I was 11 years old, my mother married her 3rd husband, who she had met 4 days earlier. He was an alcoholic and he was drunk all the time. I used to sleep with a twirling baton at night because I was afraid that he might come into my room and hurt me. He was finally arrested for more than a DWI. The newspaper that I found on my mom's bed said that he had been arrested and was accused of kidnapping the receptionist that worked at La Quinta Inn in our town, and that he had raped her, and that he had robbed 2 stores with a pocket knife. I thought at that time that going to live with our dad would be better. So we did, and it was anything but better. My dad is violent and angry and sick and dangerous. I used to listen for his truck to come up the driveway in the afternoons so that I would know to go hide from him, because it seemed like whoever he saw, that's who he hurt. And even though nothing warranted being whipped or kicked or hit or thrown into walls, I remember thinking as a teenager, we're really good kids. And I don't understand how leaving your clothes on the bathroom floor or missing the school bus or anything like that could deserve what he did to us. A few years ago, we had an incident with my dad, and it frightened me so bad, and all I could do was cry out to God. And I remembered all of a sudden Psalm 139, and I felt like I needed to read it again, so I pulled it out and I read it out loud because I needed to hear it and I needed it to sink in. And when I got to the part that said that God knit me together in my mother's womb, I became so angry. Angry that he would choose her for me. And I asked him, why did you knit me together in her womb? Why did you choose those parents for me? You knew what they would do with me. You knew that they wouldn't love me the way that I needed to be loved. And as clearly as I've ever heard an audible voice, I heard God say, I didn't need them to love you because I knew that I would, And Tessa, I didn't choose you for them. I made you for myself. That began about a 4-hour conversation that the Lord had with me that day. And for the first time, what I began to understand was that for years, over 30 years, my parents had become a mirror for me to see myself through. And when I looked into that mirror, it told me how worthless I was. And I characterized myself and defined myself and identified myself with where I had come from and the ugliness that it gave me. And for the first time that day, my father of the fatherless taught me that in him I have this new birth that does set me free from the penalty of sin and does redeem me, and I have his salvation. But this new birth gave me a new father and a new life and a new mirror. And all of a sudden I realized I am not where I've come from. I'm not who they told me I was, but I'm who he says that I am. I'm identified with Christ and all that he is. And that is the greatest hope I could ever find